The following is a Productions original series.
Hello and welcome to Walk and Roll Live. I'm Doug Vincent, along with Addie Rich. Our podcast is dedicated to amplifying the voices of the disability community. I am a polio survivor. And Miss Addie, what say you?
Yes, I say I have cerebral palsy.
Very nice, very nice.
Today and every day.
Very succinct. Today and every day. And every day in the future. How was your week?
It was good. Mother Nature is cooling us down over here. So it's been about 22 all day today. Even with the sun out. Mm-hmm. So it's nice, but I mean, it encourages housedom.
Well, I think, doesn't it go that way? Didn't the weather go that way? East to west, or west to east generally?
Yeah, I think in west to east. I don't know, though.
So you got some warm days coming, is all.
Ow.
I know, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be as warm as it was here, but we had some into the 80s a couple of days ago, but right now it's only 75 now.
It's a 50-degree spread almost between the two of us, which is insane to think about.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, a good week. I did. I don't know if I gave you the heads up that it was coming this last week, but I got to go to the Kiwanis Club of Claremont, California. Yeah, I was a Kiwanian for years and years and years, so it was great to go back. I got an invitation from them to be their speaker. That's part of their program that they do. Any club does every week or anytime they have a meeting. You know, they kind of do all their club business and that kind of thing. And then they have a speaker from, all kinds of different topics in the community. And so they asked me if I'd come and talk about the podcast, which...
I was like, what was the topic?
Glad to do. Well, I kind of put two talks because sometimes, being a broadcaster, people are interested in that. So I'll go talk to the club and I just kind of tie it all together with my experience with my disability and broadcasting. So I just kind of threw that in there too. And how it informs, what we do here, obviously, so it was great and great to see people that I hadn't seen in a while, meet some new people. So,
and your body is feeling better. So you were up for it?
Yes.
Good.
You don't know because I've been kind of putting a percentage on how much I feel back to 100%.
Yeah.
I think I was overestimating, because as I keep feeling better, I'm like, oh no, I don't think I was 90 when I was saying 90.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you and I would get off air and I'd be like, are you sure?
Yeah.
No.
Well, coming is not today. I know we've recorded some interviews. There's an interview that I did and it's coming up. It might be next week It's when I was in the hospital.
When Doug would convince me that no, he could do it.
I think it's a couple weeks away, but man, I went and listened to it and I'm like, oh my God, that's what I sounded like? So,
when I kept telling you, it's okay, we can postpone. And you're like, no, I got it. I was like, whoa.
But I did say, you were going to do most of the talking, which you did, thank goodness. And, I chimed in a couple times, but when I did, like, oh, what's wrong with that poor guy? So got that to look forward to.
Right. For sure.
Yeah. So, generally at some point during the podcast, we talk about, liking and subscribing and sharing and all that. And I'd like to just try a little experiment because I think sharing might be important to kind of help our message get out. If you're enjoying our conversations with our guests and, and their life stories and ups and downs and the triumphs they have overcoming their setbacks, please share it. And hopefully we can grow this community and grow the reach that we have and make a difference in more people's lives. That's kind of what my hope is. So, give it a share and see what happens. And then also a thank you to Mike Kent, who was on last week. We appreciate him coming on and sharing his story. There was some of it that was, I was thinking of some stories, maybe we should put a warning on here, huh?
I know.
When somebody's drilling too far into your head.
Trigger warning. Medical trauma.
Medical trauma. So, but today's episode, I don't know. Is there anything with Avriel that, I mean, he had an accident, but he didn't go into too much graphic detail there. I think you can.
No, I think it's a story, as always, it's a story of resilience. I feel like we kind of open a chapter of like a giant fairy tale book, and every time it's a different fairy tale. So this is a fairy tale that takes place on a railroad.
You know what? And I know there's so many people that can relate to this. You know, you go through life and you don't know what turns it's going to take. There's plot twists, right?
Right.
Yeah.
My favorite.
So this guy, I feel like he was truly, in his heart, in his being, was an artist.
Yes.
But just the practicality of life, you know, kind of took him in a direction. For 20 years, he kind of got off that path. And now he's coming back to it. And it's great to hear the story of, you know, how that all happened. So we'll get into that next, right here on Walk and Roll Live. But first, this message from Avriel Professional Training.
At Avriel Professional Training, we know that your greatest asset is your team. Investing in their development, knowledge, and happiness is essential for your business's success and growth. To achieve new heights, it's important to hire intelligent, talented individuals and empower them to excel in their areas of strength and passion. Avriel is committed to transforming your employees into happier, more productive, and fulfilled individuals. When your team thrives, your business prospers. Wise leaders understand that providing team members with opportunities to shine in their strengths unlocks untapped potential. Elevate your team with Avriel Professional Training and witness the growth of your business.
From the Avriel Professional Training Studios, you're listening to Walk and Roll Live, Disability Stories.
Sunrise hits my face, just like you. Another brand new day, tell me what you gonna do. I wish that you could see what's inside of me. I laugh, I cry, I live, I die. I hope, I dream, it would seem I'm just like you.
Welcome back to Walk and Roll Live. This is the fun part where we get to meet our guests and learn all about them and their journey. And so let's start with your name, where you're from, and your disability status.
Alrighty, my name is Avriel Sandoval. I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina, but I am a resident of Atlanta, Georgia, or the Atlanta metro area. My disability status that I do have a disability. I guess physically, people would think I was able-bodied.
Yeah.
I do have the ability to walk and things like that. So, but I do have a spinal cord injury at the T5 level that comes with a lot of different challenges.
All right. Well, maybe you can share those with us as we move forward. Let's find out a little bit about you and your early life. What were your interests?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I enjoyed, baseball and riding bikes, things like that, spending time with my father, going to sporting events with him. When I got into my teenage years, my interest steered more towards photography. But that's an interesting part of my story, actually, is I kind of abandoned photography until after my spinal cord injury. Mm-hmm. And that had recovery from my spinal cord injury is really what led me back into photography.
It came calling, huh?
That's right.
Yeah. Good.
Right.
So does that give you purpose? Is that what you feel like?
And it really does. It has changed my perspective on life in general and people. I've had a pretty long career on the railroad, 20 years on the railroad spent about 15 of those in operations management in the field.
Post-injury?
And that prior to my injury.
Prior, gotcha. Okay.
Prior injury.
Yeah, prior to my injury, I spent time there, and in operations management, it gives you it kind of positions you to straddle the line between being not being too close to your employees, but also not being a jerk. You can't be too personable, but you need to be warm and inviting so that your employees develop trust with you.
Yeah.
But on the railroad, and especially in operations management, we deal a lot with managing of behavior, people, and how they behave on the property. So naturally that leads to situations of discipline with employees, and also injuries, accidents, and the management of those processes. That changed me in a bad way, I would say. Not that I disliked people or I didn't want to be warm and inviting. I just didn't. What I saw was people as potential problems.
Yeah. Before even exhibiting, right? Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And as an operations manager on railroad, that's a 24/7 job.
Yeah.
So you're never really off. You're always connected to your workforce in some way. So to say, you can get a break from it, you really can't. You're constantly living in this world of anxiety.
Getting calls in the middle of the night. Different accidents that may occur, crossing accidents where people have been fatally injured. I went through my own experience of an employee of mine being fatally injured. And so those things changed how I viewed people. And I find it to be embarrassing to say, but it's also shows how much I've grown personally. Mm-hmm. But I did see people as an obstacle and as something that's going to cause me to work harder or, deal with some problem. Yeah.
And where photography comes back in to this conversation is it allows me now to see people in a completely different way. I see the beauty of people, men, women, disabled, able-bodied, whatever the case may be. I see that beauty that they offer the world first before I see the problems that they may bring to my attention.
Yeah. And I know you've heard this. I'm sure you've heard this where, everybody I know that's in a managerial position, they talk about that same thing. They do more, their day-to-day activities take up more with that. And it's almost like you're babysitting kids,
Right.
Yeah. So
kids who are bigger problems because it's a railroad. You have potential,
like you say, for real injuries, including fatalities. So that's
so I'm backing you up though in your story because we just aged you into your railroad career. But first, you kind of seem to like pressure. You thrive a bit on pressure because you moved to New York.
That's right.
So tell us, you finished high school and you head to New York.
Yeah. So when I graduated high school, I was still very heavily into photography at this point. I moved to New York City. I didn't want to go to college. That was the first thing. And I was like, how can I make money and not have to go to college? And I decided, I have family in New York. My uncle, who was also didn't go to college, he was a commodities trader at the New York Mercantile Exchange. So I knew you could make really good money doing that. Yeah. I didn't understand the processes of how you get to that point of being a trader. But I had it in my mind, like, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go up there and become rich that way.
Right.
That was actually my plan B, was to become rich that way. My plan A was to shoot, street photography and maybe get into a gallery, or that was like the dream of mine, was to get into like a gallery for street photography. What I ended up doing stupidly was going to the mall and finding a place called Picture People, which was a family portrait place, which specialized mainly in small children. And I was an 18-year-old boy at this time, and being able to entertain little children to make them smile just wasn't something I was very good at. So I lasted in that job for maybe a week and a half And like this photography thing is not going to pay my bills. It's not going to be what works for me. Yeah. And so I put the camera away and I decided, I got to grow up and try to really do something. So I talked to my uncle, who got me a job as at first just a runner I would run the order from the person who was operating the phone with the customer to the trader in the ring who's trading. That I did that back and forth all day. And then what was that?
I said, right. That's a lot of agility work. But literally you're physically shuffling a paper.
Right.
Yes.
I did that for a little while. And then one of the brokers thought, I had some potential. So he gave me a role as a trade input processing clerk. So basically what that job was, you input all of the executed trades into the computer, but you also are responsible for any disputes between brokers. So you have to basically go to bat for your broker to make sure that they're getting the right price. Everyone's getting the right price, or if the other broker doesn't agree, you're then arguing to try to make it right. So I did that, and I started to get really interested in being a trader. And I talked to my uncle, and he said, well, to become a trader, there's a couple of steps. It's like a fraternity. And the first thing is you need to be sponsored by somebody. So somebody here has to like you enough to say they'll sponsor you. The next thing is you have to buy a seat or lease a seat. And at the time in 2003, the cost of a seat was $250,000.
Whoa.
Now,
Wow.
These guys made sick money. So $250,000 really wasn't a big deal. I remember messing up trades and losing my broker 25 grand or 10 grand, and him being like, just don't do that again. Not having a meltdown.
Right.
Don't do that again, kind of thing. So that you finding someone to sponsor you is really, and help you buy that seat, is not that big of a deal. The problem is it's like mafia rules. They will sponsor you and they will help you get that seat, and then you'll pay them back your earnings at a rate of 75% until it's all paid back. So that's when I started to get leery about, how am I going to make this happen? I don't trust anybody enough to invest like that, and plus these guys might literally kill you. They're in the bathroom, doing coke in the morning and going out and meeting prostitutes. They're not the most upstanding people. That was really shocking too. Yeah. So the environment really wasn't an environment that I truly loved. I liked the science of it, and I liked the arguing, the interaction, the way it worked. I like that, but the rest of the lifestyle didn't really fit with what I really wanted to do. So I ended up moving back to Georgia and deciding, I guess I can try school. And I did that until I found a position on the railroad.
How did you even think of railroad though? That's not a typical, hey, I'm going to the railroad, people.
So when I say I found a position on the railroad, I should rephrase it to my parents found a position on the railroad for me, so that they would stop having to pay my bills. But my father,
arranged
was
marriage, of course.
That's right. My father was a railroader. So I'm second generation. That's how I know about it. And really growing up, I was not fascinated by the railroad at all. I never had any interest in it. I hated when my mom would drop me off at the yard office to sit with my dad for a few hours. I hated that. So I never had any desire to work on the railroad. But I was in school, and my parents thought I was not there enough. They felt like I was paying a tuition for an apartment and for a car for me to be home more than I was actually at school. So my dad called me one day and said, hey, I'm not paying your rent this month. And I said, well, what does that mean? How does that work? And he said, I'm not going to pay your rent this month, or your car payment. And immediately I called my mother and I'm like, this dude has lost his mind. Have you talked to him? He's crazy. He's saying he's not paying for my car. He's not paying for my apartment. What am I going to do? And she said, well, yeah, he talked to me first. We agreed. Yeah. We're not paying him for that anymore. And I said, well, what am I going to do? And they said, well, the railroad's hiring. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. I won't do that. But they forced me to put in a bunch of job applications for various conductor positions or clerical positions, crew management positions. I ended up getting a call back for centralized yard operations, which was actually the department my father worked in at the time. And I went to a hiring session and I got knocked out at the hiring session. I wasn't selected. Like in like the second round, it was actually pretty embarrassing, but it made me happy. I called.
Right. You're like, I did what you said.
I went.
I tried.
They rejected me. They didn't want me. My dad said, hold on. And put the phone down. He talked to somebody, picked the phone back up. He said, next Thursday, be there and don't be late. And I was like, okay. So I went through the next week and went through the whole thing and I ended up getting hired. And I remember working with my father. Like it would be the weekends and he would be a manager for the region that I worked on. So I remember I would purposely just bring him a bunch of problems, like a bunch of things that I knew would be difficult for him to deal with, just payback, a little payback every time. But I ended up really disliking that role as in that group and wanting to really actually do something, actually be ambitious. And so I strategically positioned myself within the clerical department to be able to have a conversation with somebody with real power in the transportation department. So I ended up getting a role in the Georgia Division Superintendent's office and worked that role strategically to get an opportunity to go in his office and tell him, hey, you know what? I know I don't have the background that everybody else has that you guys normally look at for these transportation roles, but I do bring a different perspective than a lot of people that you would see coming into your office. And I would like an opportunity to be in management. And he listened and gave me that opportunity. And so that's how I ended up as a field transportation supervisor. And I worked various roles in the transportation department up to superintendent. And then that's when I had my spinal cord injury.
Was that on the job?
So yes. What happened was I was rear-ended while working. One of the things that we're all held accountable for in the transportation department is injury rates. So when that car accident happened, I made the very bad decision to not go seek treatment or even be seen by any doctor to avoid adding to an injury, to avoid creating another statistic that I myself was responsible for. I wasn't having a good year in safety then, so I really was scared to do that, to go see a doctor. So I let a lot of time pass, and about 6 months after that car accident, I woke up with my feet feeling tingly, like numb almost. And I dealt with that for a little while. I felt like that was strange. And then I noticed it moved up more towards like up through my leg up to my knee. And then I started to get concerned. I went and saw my primary care doctor, and they thought that maybe I was having just some nerve issues. So they gave me some gabapentin and said, hey, if it doesn't get better, call me back, basically. In that time when I was taking the gabapentin and trying to figure this thing out, it progressed higher up towards my hips, and this now on both sides. And I fell down the stairs, and then I realized like something is really not right here. And I thought maybe it was like an early onset of MS or something. So I went to
At that time, how old were you?
37.
Yeah, so you're still like, this is early for MS.
Yeah.
I mean, people show signs earlier, but it's more rare. But yeah.
Right. So that's what I was thinking. Maybe it was something like that. So I went and saw a neurologist, and then they did CT scans of my brain and my spinal cord. And they called me and said, you need to go see a neurosurgeon. Here's the contact. And I went to see him, and he walked in and he said, hey man, were you thrown from a horse? And I said, no. He said, did you fall off a roof? No. He said, because you have a herniated disc that's like horribly herniated. And he said, some kind of violent action would cause that. Do you have any idea where that came from? And I feel like, yeah, I got rear-ended on the interstate about 6 months ago. And he was like, did you go see anybody? And I was like, no, I didn't. He said, wow, like you should have. You really should have. And he said, well, I'll be honest with you, we need to operate on this, and we need to do it pretty quickly. And I was like, why? Well, I mean, what happens if we don't operate on it? I've never had surgery at that point in my life. So I was like, I don't want surgery. You know, what happens if I deal with these numb feet for a little while? And he said, no, I mean, if you don't get this operated on, you will be in a wheelchair in about 10 years. And I said, but what if I get it operated on and it goes bad? And he said, I'll be honest with you, the way it's herniated and how it's compressing your artery, I don't have a good feeling about it. You know, you may be in a wheelchair either way. He said, but definitely without intervention, you will be. And so I ended up going in and getting that herniated disc corrected. And then I had a slew of problems after that. So when the initial surgery actually went well. I mean, it was fine. I was having a little bit more trouble in recovery from that first surgery as far as mobility goes than my surgeon thought I would be, and that created a lot of anxiety for me. But I ended up getting a pulmonary embolism after that first surgery. And I guess I should take a little responsibility for that. I wasn't doing my breathing, that little breathing machine thing that they give you. I wasn't doing it as often as I was supposed to. But they also failed to put embolism boots on me for 3 days. So when they finally did get the embolism boots onto me, I had already formed a clot in my leg, and those boots pushed that clot up into my lungs, basically. And when they saw it, when they first noticed it, they gave me blood thinners, which was a mistake because it was too soon after my surgery. And that created an egg-sized hematoma on my spinal cord. But I actually went through and had to have the pulmonary embolism thing fixed first, which I had to do awake because I had eaten, and it was so dire that the surgeon was like, we can't wait because you're like on the verge of a massive heart attack. So we have to do this now. And he said, I can't sedate you because if you aspirate, you will die. And he also told me that he basically explained like 3 different ways I was going to die in this situation. If we make a mistake and now that you had blood thinners, we can't stop the bleeding, you'll bleed out. If, there's several different very scary things that they told me about. So I did have twilight anesthesia for that, but I definitely remember that surgery pretty vividly. It was pretty traumatic. When I came out of recovery from that surgery is when the hematoma started to really bother me. And it was an extreme amount of pain. I was getting shot up with morphine. I was trying to get any type of relief, and I couldn't. It was like 12 hours of just agony. And then they finally did a scan and realized, hey, you got this big pocket of blood on your spinal cord. So when they went to clean that out, that is when my spinal cord was damaged. So I woke up out of that surgery with no pain, but also with no feeling below my chest and no ability to move. And that was a very, very challenging mental space to be in, to try your very best to move. And no matter how hard you try, you don't move. It was very scary. It was very traumatic.
At that point, were you in like a regular hospital? You hadn't gone to Shepherd yet at that point.
That's right. I was still at a regular hospital.
Okay.
I was not in great shape medically, so I ended up being in the ICU there for, I would say, a week, and then I was in a regular room for another 5 days while they worked out what they were going to do, like what I was going to do.
Did they take any responsibilities for their mistakes?
No, they didn't. And I was going through I'm one of those people that when I deal with something that's traumatic, the last thing I think about are like legal things.
Right, yeah.
Like the last thing I was concerned about in those moments was, how am I going to sue these people and make it right? Yeah, I never thought like that. And it's probably for years of being afraid of lawsuits, working on railroad, and just being afraid of that in general. Yeah. It's probably why my mind never went there. But there was definitely a bit of negligence on their part, with their nursing staff for sure, and even their resident for giving me those blood thinners. But after I got to the Shepherd Center, I was in the ICU there for a little while too. I got septic and got really, really sick. Oh, yeah. I think I was in there for about 2 weeks. And then when I came out of that, I started physical therapy.
Because your body was like, wait, what? What's going on? That was the thing. When the first day that I started physical therapy, I remember thinking, like, do these people not realize what I've been through? Like, how do they expect me to do any of this? Like, this is a lot of work. Like, and I even complained to the staff, like, how do you expect someone who has just almost died 3 times to get up here and pull themselves up on these rings and do any of this stuff? And without even treating or thinking about my mental state as well, going through all of that. Right.
And they have a great staff there, and they address those concerns very quickly and very appropriately. And, sent me to therapy and had the doctors explain more things to me. The physical therapist explained more, and helped me get through that. Whereas in the previous hospitals that I had been in, I felt very pushed away and left to myself, with the exception of a couple of nurses that were really, really helpful. But for the most part, I didn't feel included in my own processes. Aside from being told that, hey, you're going to die here, or you might die here.
Hey, buddy, just let me know.
Yeah, which isn't the way you want to be included in, in anything. But the Shepherd Center, that was a real life-changing thing, both from a physical standpoint, but a lot of from a mental standpoint and an emotional growth standpoint, and learning who I was, because I had spent years being someone else. I had spent years being a figure of rule compliance and fiscal policy. That's what I had been, and I wasn't.
None of that was useful in this scenario.
None of that was useful. But I will say that I had some really great employees that I had supervised over the years that really showed that they were appreciative of how they were treated by me, especially when I was in the Shepherd Center. I actually had a conductor when I first came to Rome, Georgia. That was what my work location. I actually went to high school with him, and I didn't realize that I had went to high school with him until like I'd met him in the crew room there, and he looked familiar. Like I just thought maybe I saw him somewhere on the railroad before. But I had talked to him, and then that night when he got off work, he got hit by a car on a motorcycle and almost got killed that night. And when I came to work the next day, the engineer on that job was telling me the story about how the guy got hit, and he said his name, and I was like, "Oh, could that be that same guy?" And then I went home and looked at a yearbook, and I was like, "Yeah, that is the same guy." But I had, he was my responsibility at the time, and so I stayed in touch to make sure that he was able to, regain his ability to walk, to make sure and help him get back to work when he was ready to get back to work. Yeah. And then I had that like a kinship with him just from having gone to high school together. I actually had classes with his brothers, but he was one of the ones that when he had found out that I was at the Shepherd Center, he actually went out of his way to find out like where I was in the Shepherd Center.
So he returned
and send me things. The care packages and things like that. Things that really touch my heart, to be honest. Yeah.
So is Shepherd a spinal cord injury center?
Yes, it is.
So they're doing physical therapy, occupational therapy. Are they teaching you how to? No, you're in a chair at this point.
At that point, I was in a chair and brand new to the chair. So I was in a motorized chair.
Oh, okay.
And then
did they teach you things like how to transfer and that kind of thing?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So at first I was doing everything like to get in and out of bed. They would use a harness to, lift me up, get me into a chair.
Yeah.
And then as I transitioned to a manual chair, that's when I started to learn how to use slide boards and transfer myself from a bed to the wheelchair, or from the wheelchair to another chair. One of the things that I never thought I would appreciate in life the way I did was being able to transfer out of that wheelchair into like a regular couch or something like that. Yeah. Like that's such a feeling of winning that most people don't have to understand. Yeah. They don't have to understand.
Yeah, it brings back some of that independence.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was one of the harder things for me was I was used to being in charge, number one, of everything. Sure. Yeah. And with authority, there is independence. On the railroad, you have so many miles of territory, and superintendents are scattered, and so you have a high level of autonomy. I knew what I needed to do every month. I knew what decisions needed to be made for budgets, things like that. So I didn't really talk to my boss ever. Like the only time I talked to them is when I had to, like if I had to report an injury to them or a derailment or something. But I enjoyed independence. Yeah. And when I lost that independence, that was crushing for me. But that whole time allowed for a lot of introspection and learning about myself and what I was feeling and who I was and who I wanted to be and what I wanted to leave the world with. And I realized that there was very little about what I was doing that I felt was rewarding.
That's like free time for life inventory, right?
Yeah. I had no free time at all. So I had no life, no hobbies. Like I said, my day was kind of just one big ball of anxiety, waiting for some person to pop it and for it to all come flowing out. And I did my best to maintain composure and things like that. So a lot of people didn't see those internal struggles I was having, but I was trying, like I said, really trying to be someone I wasn't. And that was hard because I always had a love for people and conversation. And I found myself evading conversation even with my own family. Like I had become so used to not being myself that in moments where people expected me to be me, like my family, I didn't know how to even be me for them.
Yeah.
And it took that injury for me to realize that that's what it was. That it was a big mask, that I had a big mask on, where I'm this person who is centered in myself and I'm in charge, but full of insecurity about everything. Yeah. I'm insecure about my lack of formal, higher education, especially when I got into roles where I'm competing for jobs against people with degrees. So insecure about that. I'm 5'3". Was very insecure about that. I don't have a big booming voice. Very insecure about that. Because those are things that matter in leaders or in the perception of leaders. Yeah. The big burly man with the big voice who's tall and, imposing, and that's a leader. I wasn't that. So I had to really contort myself into something that was resembled authority, but was also authentic. Yeah. And that was very, very hard to do.
So you went through this inspection during your stay at the center. And did you still have to work on it once you got out? And,
oh, yeah.
Or are you still working on it? Or
still working on it.
Yeah.
Still working on it. But yeah, that's what started it. That's where I started to realize, okay, wait, you need to spend some time getting to know who you are, because who you were is someone you weren't really, and someone you're not ever able to be again.
Yeah. And so I'm sure you weren't comfortable with yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
I was very uncomfortable with myself. But one of the things that I immediately lost as far as a benefit, an insecurity that I immediately lost, was the insecurity I had about being short. Right. Because in a chair, we are all the same height.
Yeah.
And
right.
I realized this when I was we were in physical therapy, and I had a guy who had come in about a week after me. And we're sitting there and we're talking, and we're, having a lot of conversation, and for a couple of days. And they put you in this, every once in a while, they'll put you in this chair that they use a lever, and it basically makes it to where you're standing straight up.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember what it's called,
oh, yeah.
but we would do that every so often. And I had been communicating with this guy, or talking, and I'd never thought about his height, like at all. And then he got in the thing, and they stretched him out, and he was like 6'5", and I'm 5'3", so he's like a giant. And I realized that at that moment, I was like, wow, like there's no difference. Like he didn't look at me like I was inferior to him because I was small, or the perceptions that I had from being made fun of for my entire childhood for always being the short person.
Yeah.
Just that moment is when I realized, like, none of that's real. Like, people aren't really perceiving you that way. Yeah. And I lost that. Now it doesn't bother me at all to be 5'3" in a sea of 6'5" men. Yeah. I'm 40 years old, and I feel like I look pretty decent for my age. So I'll take a young looking short version of me any day.
Right.
All right. So let's pivot now to finding a new career.
So I still work for the same railroad, and thankfully I was able to use the field knowledge that I attained over the years to come into the service design department of Norfolk Southern Railroad. So what I do now is I basically manage a region of train schedules. I create the service, basically. So from first mile to last mile, I create the service. I determine when we need to put trains on, when we need to take trains away, when we need to take service away from customers, when we need to add service, what the volumes look like, what the trends look like, metrics, things like that.
Is this a train that's delivering goods, or is it?
Yes, these are merchandise trains, freight trains. And luckily for me, I had worked in a lot of different locations across our network. So everywhere that I had worked had been connected in some way to a location I wasn't super familiar with, but I know enough just from being adjacent.
Yeah.
So it's really helped. I'm sure my bosses are very happy that they don't have to hold my hand about, trains at Bellevue, Ohio. I worked in Toledo, Ohio at one point, and I'm very familiar with Bellevue because I had crews that worked in and out of Bellevue. Yeah. So things like that work to my benefit, and I'm lucky that I was able to stay within the company that I, in and maintain the benefits that I have, and still be able to be useful in a different role.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. So, photography. So that's a part of your life again.
Yep. So really the way photography came back in was it gave me, and once I regained, my ability to walk, it gave me a reason to. It gave me something to do to refine my walking skills. As simple as that sounds, yeah. That's how I got back into it. I didn't want to just walk, so I needed some way to entertain myself while walking, and taking pictures was, interesting way to do it. And I started out, basically, taking pictures of little flowers or whatever I saw on my walk. And after playing around with editing, and things started to come back to me, like with street photography and positioning myself in sunlight and angles, and the things that I remembered loving about photography started to come back. And then I became serious about really wanting to create art with my street photography that maybe doesn't resonate with anybody today, but maybe in 20 years, somebody may stumble across something I documented and think, wow, this was beautiful, or this was different or interesting. I had stumbled across some pictures that I had taken when I was 16 of the Atlanta skyline. And now working in the city, in one of those buildings, looking out, you can see just how much the city has changed in 20 years. Yeah. And I really wouldn't have had that awareness without having taken those pictures when I was 16 years old, because I could look back and see how much Atlanta changed. So that's kind of been my hope with my street photography, is that at some point, some people will find that they cared about the way something looked 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's how I kind of view it from a documentary perspective. And then more, so I will do something that would be considered more art, fine art, with use of lines and architecture, things like that, that I don't, think anybody will look back and care about, but that I hope resonates with somebody in the moment. But I have a deep passion for documentary and street photography. I think that it's an underappreciated art form. But I ended up kind of boring myself out with it. There's only so many times you can take a picture of that bridge or, that skyscraper. I do try to incorporate people into my street photography organically, or non-pose people. I really don't want people to even notice me at all. Yeah. Which all my years as a transportation supervisor, hiding to watch people work, really has paid off in street photography, because people never notice me.
Right?
Never notice.
Sounds creepy, but
yeah. But it allows me to get the organic, true expression of the way somebody feels in a moment. If they're looking, things like somebody looking at a menu in an outdoor restaurant,
Right.
There are times where there are expressions you make that you will never see. You'll never see them. Yeah. And I think about that and I'm like, wow, that person will never know how intrigued they looked by this menu.
Right.
But now, I've captured that and it's something that maybe would spark a conversation with, that's the way I see photography, is a way to make someone feel like having a conversation, or feel the emotion behind the image, or what emotion I had that day. That's the hope, I think, of every street photographer, is that people will feel based off of what they're shooting. But like I said, it bored me a little bit. I wanted something that was a little bit more challenging. And I said at the very beginning, I started at Picture People with portraits, and I absolutely hated it. So I thought, well, I'd like to do some portraits maybe, but I definitely don't want to do like children, little kids or anything like that. But I would like, to try something challenging. And so I started looking around at different portrait photographers or different styles of portrait photography. And I found boudoir photography, which, I guess as a man, most people would say, oh yeah, you found boudoir photography. Of course you did. Of course you found it.
That's funny. I was going to yell that out.
Right.
but I stumbled across that, and what I liked about it mostly was the drama that you could create with that, with those soft expressions. And it's probably the most like what I like to shoot in the street. I don't want people to really look like they're in a photo shoot when I do boudoir photography. I want it to look natural and, relaxed and, soft and beautiful. But when I first started, the way I got into it was I took a workshop. I went and found a workshop, and I did it. I went to the workshop, and I thought, I will never do this again. I will never do this again, because I felt so out of place. I felt so uncomfortable. And then it's like beer. The first time you drink a beer, you're like, I will never drink this again.
Why do people drink this?
Like randomly you crave it.
Yeah.
That's the way it was for me. Like I thought, man, this is uncomfortable. I don't like it. It doesn't make me feel good. And then like a week later, I'm like, man, I should do that again. Yeah. I guess because that negative feeling was the challenge that I was looking for.
What you'd have done your whole life of like, what can be a trial and how can I beat this game?
Exactly. So I ended up doing a few more shoots and still thinking like, oh, I'm pretty terrible at this, but sticking with it and developing, like I realized that there's so much like beauty in making someone feel good about themselves. And once I hit that mark there, and I was like, oh, wait, this is what it's about. It's not so much about making the most beautiful artwork that's going to be displayed on somebody's wall. It's about making somebody feel something in that moment. Yeah. And that and the way I view it now is I want you to have a good experience, comfortable experience, rewarding experience, so that the pictures remind you of the feelings of empowerment that you had during the shoot. Yeah. Not so much that the pictures are the end product. Mm-hmm. It's the shoot is the end product to me. Yeah. The experience is the end product. Yeah. And I want the pictures just to remind you of those feelings. And once I figured that part out, I really became much more comfortable doing it. And I wouldn't say that I'm a great boudoir photographer by any stretch. I will never be like, on anybody's blog for my great.
Well, I'm sure you're always getting better.
But I am getting better.
Yeah.
And I have been able to, track that progress over time. And my skills are improving, but the people that I'm working with are enjoying it more and more every time. And so,
which is the mark, right?
Which is the mark.
We are running out of time. Sorry. There's more questions that we have that we wanted to ask you about, but I want to wrap up with this one. So looking back on everything, your injury, recovery, career shift, what have you learned about yourself that you didn't know before? And maybe you could give our listeners some advice if they're going through something similar.
Sure. I think the biggest thing that I learned about myself is who I am. Like this is still like me learning me.
Yeah.
And I'm 40 years old, and I'm happy to say that I'm still learning who I am. Like there's more growth, there's more opportunity for me to be something different, and me to offer the world something. When I think back on my past 20 years, I can't say that I'm super proud of any of the accomplishments that I would say I've had. Whether it be promotion or salary or, any of those career centric things.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that those things made me proud. I think they made my father proud. I think they made my mother proud. It didn't really make me proud. It just made me feel like I have to work even harder to sustain this and get more. And now I've learned, like, I have an artsy brain, and it's okay.
Yes.
It's okay that I'm not constantly concerned about budgets and crew starts and, the financials or the trends of, the workplace, company metrics.
Yeah.
That it's okay that my brain doesn't work in that direction, or that I'm not a good Excel spreadsheet guy.
Yeah.
But I hone in on the things that I'm good at, and I'm good at communicating. I'll say that. And so if anybody needs something communicated, I step in and I'll help.
You're our man. It's funny because I've been looking at this, and our listeners, they're not seeing the video. We get together on a Zoom call and we just use the audio, but you were a photographer early on, and that's kind of what you were pursuing at a young age. And there's a guitar sitting behind you. So yeah, you're an artist. You're a creative person, so you got sidetracked a little bit, no pun intended, but but I think you're finding yourself, and sadly, it took an injury like this to kind of bring you back, but I'm glad you're finding yourself.
And that's the thing that I think people are more shocked to hear is when I say I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I deal with chronic pain every day. Yes, I deal with stomach issues every day, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I deal with these things, because every time it reminds me that I'm still learning who I am and getting to know myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very good. Avriel Sandoval, thank you for joining us on Walk and Roll Live. That was very entertaining.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.
Each week on Walk and Roll Live, we share honest and open stories of people living with a disability.
I think it's even worse now because, they give me a roller coaster to run around town in, and I basically am just like trying to find the biggest curb to jump off
Yes.
of.
Right. You're like, I know I can return myself from hard things, so I'm going to.
Hey.
Join us weekly for another powerful episode. Walk and Roll Live, wherever you get your podcasts. Life limitless. Subscribe now.
From the Ugyar Professional Training Studios, you're listening to Walk and Roll Live Disability Stories.
Walk and Roll Live, another week, another story. Avriel Sandoval, what do you think?
Cool. So this story is awesome. And I'm lucky because this is a friend I made through a friend, so now we're friends. Now he's stuck with me, and it's nice to be able to support another human in things that people don't generally want to talk about, right? Like what it's like to be through a catastrophic injury and illness, or like lasting effects, right? People are like, oh, just get on with it, you're better. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
And so it is truly been an example of why we do this, right? Like the fact that we are making a comfortable space for people to talk about it, and then we don't just like have them on and ditch them. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
They become part of our family, our little, Walk and Roll Life family. And I feel so blessed every day to like be more and more comfortable with myself in which a way that I can extend a hand to others. So,
well,
tremendous story.
We've been kind of planning in the background to make it together to Abilities Expo in Los Angeles, which is actually going to be in Long Beach this year at the Convention Center.
Yes.
Going back,
March.
I think they were there years ago, but at any rate, and I know you've talked about, putting together some kind of a mixer, but we'll have to reach out to everybody that's been a guest on this show. And, if they're anywhere near Los Angeles, March 28th, I think is the Saturday that we'd like to be there. I would love to have us all gather, in front of the Abilities Expo sign or something, and have a big picture of everybody, as many people as we can. I mean, I already know there's going to be a lot of people I know that are going to be there, but we'll put the word out and see what we can put together.
Yeah. Right. My dreams come true.
Absolutely. And, I don't know if we could have really made any sense of it, but, I'm sure a lot of people listening, especially other spinal cord injury survivors, everybody thinks, or, certainly hopes that they're going to be able to walk again. They work very hard at it. If there's any chance, they want to try to accomplish that. But, for Avriel to be able to walk again, I don't know what all the particulars were, what level his injury, what the severity of his injury was. But for him to now be walking again, in some capacity, it doesn't sound like he's, 100% again, but doing very well. So we love that. And then finding his muse again and photography and all of that. So that's an awesome story. All righty. Anything else? What have we got coming up?
Not that I know.
No?
Anything for you?
Just Michelle Steiner is our guest for next week. She lives with an invisible disability, so we'll talk a little bit about, how that impacts your life. Being told what you can't do.
Yes.
There are people that will, I guess they call it infantilizing, and tell you what you can and can't not do. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Michelle Steiner next week here on Walk and Roll Live. All right. Thank you for listening again. And one more time, like, share, do all that. But we're kind of focusing on share this week. So if you could share our podcast and see how much of a difference that can make. So, any final thoughts?
Guys. We'll see you next week.
Yes. All right. I'm your host, Doug Vinson, along with Addie Rich from the York Professional Training Studio. This has been Walk and Roll Live, Disability Stories, Life Limitless.